All right, hello and welcome. We appreciate you joining us for this presentation offered to you by CW Plus. And next slide, please. Wonderful. You are at the Campus to Career Navigating the Transition to Professional Life presentation that's going to be offered to you by the CW Plus team, consisting of myself and my fellow presenters. And just as an introduction, so you can get to know us in terms of the voices and faces in this space. So my name is Courtney Reed. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and at CW Plus, I am the counseling program manager, which means I'm fortunate to do some work and working with people on a one-to-one basis, helping them navigate through a lot of these topics we're going to talk about today, as well as others that are under the guise of just career and educational transitions. And I will hand it off to my colleague Jamie to introduce herself.
Thanks, Courtney. My name is Jamie Zawistowski. I'm the Business Administrator Senior for CEW Plus. I handle finance, HR, and budgeting for the center. I have been with CEW for about 9 years and with the university for about 19. I will pass it over to Bridget.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jamie. My name is Bridget Gormley, and I'm a Master of Social Work student counseling intern here at CW Plus. I've been completing my internship here through the Michigan School of Social Work, and I've been happy to be involved in plenty of different career counseling opportunities, as well as presentations like the one you're about to watch. So I'm going to hand things over to Courtney to get us started.
All right, wonderful. Thank you both. So we do have an agenda just to kind of let you know what we have in store for today. We'll do just a quick service overview. That'll be beneficial for folks who may not be so familiar with CW Plus. Then we'll dive into talking about preparing for these kinds of transitions, the process of applying for jobs, and then kind of going through some tangible steps of interviewing and handling job negotiations. And we'll round out our time together with thinking about how we can look forward and next steps. One additional thing to be aware of in accompanying this presentation is that on our website, you should also be able to see there's like a company handout that's called 4 quadrants that you can also utilize. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit further deeper into the presentation, but just to make you aware that it is an activity that you can do beforehand or afterward, depending on your comfort level to help you deepen your reflection and review process. With that, we will go ahead and get started. So thinking about CW Plus, CW Plus stands for Center for the Education of Women Plus, and we are an organization based here at the University of Michigan and Ann Arbor campus that really works to empower women and underserved individuals in our U of M and surrounding community. And the way that we go about fulfilling that mission is kind of serving as an advocate with providing resources to help people reach their academic, financial, and professional potential. So what might that look like in action? Well, we'll talk about some of our core services. So the primary program that we offer that's kind of associated with this presentation is our free career and educational counseling program. As I mentioned, that both Bridget and myself partake in offering those services. We have a wide array of free events and workshops that we host throughout the year. We also have some other primary programs that really center around offering funding resources to our U of M and Arbor students. That includes scholarships, fellowships, emergency funding, and graduation grants, as well as some different student organizational and student speaker funding opportunities. Our office also doubles as a student study space, so people are able to come in and just be part of our physical community, to have quiet spaces to study with free refreshments that can be available. And we also host a social work internship program for master's level students through the University of Michigan School of Social Work. All right. So hopefully that feels like it's given you a really grounded kind of understanding of what we do here at CW Plus. And now I'm excited to dive into with you to talk about just the kind of content at hand, which is terms of how can we prepare for this transition to ease from our role as a student and to our role as a professional. I wanted to start off the portion of the presentation that I'll have with you, just really thinking about this kind of like self-reflective space in terms of expectations, knowledge, awareness that you might have as we talk about even some more tangible steps later on. And I think first it's important to start off with thinking about what are some of those key differences between being a student versus an employee. So we're thinking about just even for schedule and work expectations, which sometimes can be one of the largest ones. As a student, you're often able to create your own schedule. You select your classes semester or term by term. Perhaps you have some employment that you're able to work in there in addition to some extracurricular activities. And that can really offer a lot of like accommodating your own like personal wake and sleep and energy levels. However, when we transition to work settings, sometimes that might be a little bit more rigid. We may go from scheduling as a part-time worker, full-time student to working 40 hours, 9 to 5. And so just thinking about, are you ready to make that transition in terms of the shift in the work hours? Is your body and your routine and your schedule ready to adapt to that? And not only thinking about the hours, but just also the expected performance during that time. If it is working straight through with a few breaks woven in, are you ready to be able to offer that kind of like level of productivity and work output? And also, if you're someone who's used to maybe taking breaks or returning home or having some flexibility, just what does it mean to be perhaps on site versus in an office or working from home remotely as you have been before? In addition to talking about like flexibility and ability to take time off, sometimes if we miss class, there's probably like a negative impact on our grade, or if we have a little bit more flexibility to make things up on the other side of things. But oftentimes in employment spaces, there's going to be limits to how often you can be away or missing work to the point that that might jeopardize your standing to keep your employment. And so, just again, like what are the ramifications for some of those liberties that we were able to take before, now that we're in the structure of a workplace environment? Next, we think about self-expression and work culture, which really is this idea of consequence of how we express ourselves and also just in terms of what choices we make and where. One of the things that largely comes to mind with this is we think about maybe we've seen people who after hours or utilizing social media or expressing their thoughts in a space that feels really individualized. And then perhaps there's someone who's in disagreement and maybe reaches out to that person's workplace or other places that that person may be affiliated with to say, hey, one of your staff is saying this, and is this a representation of your company? And we're worried about this. And sometimes that can have negative consequences and impact. Each workplace setting is going to be different. And oftentimes, I think when we are in our student role, we're used to kind of being in a space of expression and challenging and being able to kind of like flesh that out in the moment and it be okay and welcomed. Whereas in work settings, it might be a little bit more limited or there might be broader expectations put on you. So just to be aware of what happens and how you communicate and what some of the consequences may be, and just to know how you can protect yourself so that way there aren't anything that's unintended or surprising for you. Additionally, we think about colleague and coworker interactions. Sometimes if we have kind of like a rough or bristly interaction with someone who's a fellow student, we assume that probably at the end of the semester, we will go our separate ways because this class will be over. Or perhaps I'm going to graduate from this program and maybe I'll never see you again. Versus the coworker might be there for the long haul. You might be the entire tenure of the time that both of you are there. It's a little bit more uncertain. And so the way that we navigate conflict, the way that we build relationships and figure out how to conduct ourselves has to be considerate of the fact that we don't know how long we'll be overlapping or where we might come across each other again in the future. So thinking about just like what your personal approach might be in terms of making friends or connections, what some of the different HR policies might be around like fraternization or connecting with people, and also how that impacts the level and structure of the organization. What can you do with your boss? And if you have someone who's reporting to you, what's appropriate or expected in terms of how you interact with them? And also to what tools and resources you might use to resolve conflicts in the way that protects and supports everybody. Organizational structure, this is thinking more so about like how is the system or is there a system of hierarchy or how might you relate to each other and how might you go about like addressing concerns? Who are you accountable to? And how do you navigate just in terms of making sure you're following whatever procedures or steps are in place? So previously, as a student, you may have been able to go to your dean if there was a concern, versus in a workplace setting, they may want you to work through your immediate supervisor, then maybe that manager or someone else who's in C-suite before you go all the way to the top. And so just kind of being aware of that and the expectations around it. And then lastly, thinking about finances and sustainability. The flow of your income might be different depending on how you work supporting yourself or navigating income during your student experience. What is it like to change into whatever the payroll calendar or structure might be for the space that you're landing? If you're going into monthly payments, or perhaps it's as needed in terms of when you earn commissions or consultation fees, are you ready to cover your basic needs and your other expenses with that structure? And have you set in the parameters that might be appropriate for it? In addition to thinking about retirement selections, taxes and benefits, and all these other things that might be tapping on or related to your income and compensation, have you given consideration and had enough research to know what the ramifications of that are and how you best prepare yourself? And so, just again, thinking about just things that are going to be different in this space and what you might need to be aware of so that way you can make best decisions as you embark upon this transitory experience. Right, next slide. All right, so we've got some considerations that we're thinking about, and we're like, how do I at least kind of maybe ground some of those expectations? How do I get prepared for that? We're going to be thinking about the space of self-reflection and also like awareness of the setting and how do we combine those two. So for the self-reflection component, I kind of put down know thyself in terms of like what might I need or what can I expect, and what knowledge and wisdom do I have about who I might be in the workplace setting. So with this, I want to encourage you to draw back upon like the previous work that you've done. If you've had part-time gigs, if you've done any kind of self-employment or student employment, perhaps you've been in internship settings, you may have a sense of how you navigate in spaces that are a little bit different than just like your straight student role. And if you haven't had those opportunities yet, you might have grown up in a household where other people were navigating their own workplace and professional experiences. And maybe you learned through some of the stuff that they talked about or complained about or celebrated. And maybe you thought, geez, I don't know if I'd like that myself, or that would make me mad, or that would make me happy. Using that wisdom and that reflection of just what is the grounding of what you know. And of course, expecting and understanding that there's stuff that's yet to be determined. And my hope is that out of that, you might begin to kind of tease out some of your own personal needs and wants of what work should look like and how it should feel for you. We're going to think about also knowing the norms and expectations of the workplace. I think oftentimes the easiest way to do this is just to kind of really go through the space of reading handbooks and stuff once you get onboarded, once you start, to ask really important questions during the interview process, and also to ask your colleagues or other people who might be familiar with the workplace. So just how do things happen here? What are the rules? What are the stuff that's kind of rigid that might be hard, fast? It's, you have to abide by it if you're going to stay here. What might be the spaces that are flexible and more individualized? And what might be up for negotiation for your particular space of employment with that particular employer. And then out of that, my hope is that you can figure out what spaces are allowed for your own self-advocacy for the things that you need. What might be a space of compromise in terms of maybe I can't get everything, but there's some leeway that I can find here. And also what might be a space of acceptance in terms of working here at this employer means I'm going to be experiencing this until I decide to make my departure, and I just have to come to terms with that. And throughout this entirety of this, wanting you to think about how can you take care of yourself as you're transitioning through in terms of roles. What might your needs be outside of the workplace? How can you attend to your emotional, physical wellness, your social supports? How can you pace yourself? Perhaps if you're starting a new job, you might decrease some of your other commitments just to make room and time for this adjustment. Where might be the soft spaces that you can land just to be able to make sure that you are as intact and feeling as best as possible as you move through. All right. So when I talk about self-reflection and some of the things I just went over, some people can kind of like, okay, yeah, Courtney, I can write that down and maybe kind of jot some ideas down. Other people might really benefit from something that's a little bit more of a structured exercise. And so I wanted to have an offering for that. And this is kind of referring to that worksheet that I mentioned at the start of our presentation, which is called the 4 quadrants exercise. And it really is just a simplistic kind of like squares on a page space to really have you categorize and think about some of the different factors and needs and wants that you have for your job search process, to capture them written at this point in time, and then be able to use this as a framework for you to move forward and how you evaluate different offers. So as you'll see here, this kind of like image is basically the gist and the core of the activity itself that's going to be on that worksheet. And we'll go into the next slide to kind of talk about what these different quadrants might mean. All right, so in these different spaces, the first top left is going to be thinking about, what are some of the essential factors or things that you might need for an employment setting. So bare minimum things that are required for you to have optimal employment success. At base, I have to have this going on here. Otherwise, I don't even know if I could do this job and actually kind of complete the functionality of it. But then after that, we're going to move into the space of thinking about what's tolerable for you. Stuff that you can compromise on or tolerate to make an employment option work. May not be ideal, maybe a little bit fluid, but just I can kind of operate in that space if it's required to kind of be able to move forward to the next step. We're going to be thinking about things that are kind of bonus factors, right? That would be lovely to have, but wouldn't rule out an employment option for you. And for that, I tell people this might be kind of like the sky's the limit space of imagining and hoping for what an employment opportunity could be, in addition to the deal breaker space, which is just these are things that might be a walk away point for you, stuff that would cause you to decline an employment option. I can't do this if this is present. And one of the things I give as a tip for folks is that this category often is the opposite of what's in the essential category. if you're looking for ideas and inspiration on how to think about this. And in terms of like what kind of topics or factors might we include in this quadrant worksheet, we might be thinking about the location of our employer, commute, benefits and salary, the work environment, the type of schedule, organizational values, and so forth. So just think about like what might I need based off that self-reflective space that I'm aware of that I can kind of take into this next layer and next step of my job search. So let's look at an example of what this might look like on our next slide here. So this is just like regular person that I put together as an example of how they might fill out this quadrant page. So for in this essential category, they're like, stuff that I have to have at base is I need to have at least one work from home day per week. Perhaps this person has caregiving responsibilities or something that requires them to have that flexibility that one day is what's needed at minimum to take care of that. It has to be on the table. And also I want an employer that aligns with my personal values. If they're doing something that feels like it's a moral conflict or just stuff that I don't appreciate, makes me feeling kind of icky at the end of the day, I can't be there and I can't do my best work. Health and dental insurance, that person might have some stuff going on with their own kind of healthcare needs that's going to be a really important part of their next leg of their personal journey. And then at salary base, at minimum, might need to be $60,000. That is the minimum amount that I can take to cover all my expenses and take care of my bare necessities, even though ideally I would want more. We shift over into this space of what might be tolerable for them. And like, you know what? I went to school for something, but I would be open to doing something that's slightly unrelated to my degree if it was a good fit. And obviously not ideal, but I could make it work. And also too, I could also make work like some commuting space, right? It'd be lovely if this, job opportunity was in my neighborhood, but if it happened to be 20 to 45 minutes away, I could do that. That wouldn't feel too taxing. Shifting into the bonus space, we're like, well, maybe I want to go back to school and get some tuition reimbursement. So I'd love to be able to have that fully covered. I'd love to be able to go to conferences and do some professional development without any cost out of pocket for me. I want a really healthy 401k match that might be over 5% or beyond. And I also want a private office, no cubicle, no open desks or flex desk arrangement. I want a door closed with a window, as well as casual dress code and perhaps just having the flexibility of not having to sit at a desk all day. Perhaps it's really normalized for them to get up and move around at that particular workplace. And then deal breaker, if this job or employer has no hybrid or remote work options at all, and it's 5 days or a full-time schedule in office, I can't do that. I have to turn it down. Or if they're requiring me to relocate out of state, I'm not in a position in space and time right now to move. And so I'm also going to have to turn that down too. And if there is no health insurance coverage, or perhaps it's really poor and really expensive, that doesn't make sense for me to move into that and be stuck there. So again, I'd have to turn it down. So just again, we kind of see this thought process of like what it's like to consider these different options and to use this and capture it to evaluate options moving forward. All right. So again, thinking about how might we apply this, this could be the framework for your job search. Once you've captured this information on the page and you've done your own self-reflection, you can think about as you evaluate jobs on job search boards or things that come across your desk. Do I even want to apply for this? If it looks like, for example, it's 5 days in office per week, no work from home, I might not spend my time applying for that because I know it's not going to be a good fit. So this can help me eliminate and give framework for what I'm looking for. Additionally, if I'm in a space of I've got multiple competing offers in this process because I've been interviewing some different spaces, I might look to see maybe who's hitting on a lot of those bonus options or just how might I weigh options against each other. And also, how can you evaluate your experience as a new employee in terms of I had some expectations and hopes for what my career journey would look like. Maybe let's think about what it actually has been now that I'm out of my probationary period, or maybe I'm 6 months into a new job. And then also too, this can serve as a reflection piece as you grow and evolve throughout your career. My expectation is that this is not a static document that you just kind of complete once and never touch again. You can return to this document and recreate and refill out some of the information as you go through different spaces of early career, mid-career, late career to observe how your needs and wants and expectations are going to shift and that to be okay. And also too, how can you just kind of honor those changes and be sure that they're accurately up to date with what your life might be. So if your family is growing, or perhaps you're going back to school, or you are moving, some of those categories and boxes and stuff are going to shift around a bit, and just to be open to that too. This is an ongoing process. You will change, and so your expectations and needs and wants will as well. All right. So with that, I want to shift this into talking about some of the more tangible steps of getting ready for the job search, which Jamie will help walk us through.
Thank you very much, Courtney. Okay, so now that you've thought about what's essential for you when you're thinking about applying for jobs, let's transition to thinking about actually applying for these positions. So units or companies that are accepting applications may receive 40, 60, 80 or more applications for each job opening. So what we want to think about now is how do you increase your likelihood of giving an interview? What might make sense or what might help you stand out among the others that apply? So first thing, it's recommended that you set aside time to give individual attention to each job that you're interested in. This means customizing your materials for each opportunity. Your resume and cover letter could look slightly different. You might highlight different aspects of your experience in one job versus another. This allows you to align and really talk about the skills and experience you bring to that particular opportunity. This does take a little bit more time, but it will almost certainly increase your likelihood of giving an interview. Just as you're being selective, looking at what units or companies or opportunities you're applying for, you should do that when you're writing your resume and making sure that you're letting these individuals and companies know why you're the right person for this job. Going back to what Courtney just talked about in the quadrant activity, thinking about that as you think about setting your time aside for these opportunities. So let's talk about one example. In many job openings, they might mention that customer service experience is necessary. This could be your opportunity to talk about what customer service experience you have. In another job opportunity, it might be talking about organizational skills. That's your opportunity to think about, reflect on, and talk about what organizational skill experience you have. It's important to also take a few minutes as you're looking at a job posting to really understand what's being requested of you. Is the job posting asking for a cover letter? At U of M, most jobs ask for a cover letter. If you don't submit one and it said that you needed one, the reviewers may not even look at your resume. There might be other materials that are requested. A transcript, a skills survey, or a writing sample. If any of these are noted, be sure to submit that information. Sometimes people ask me, why might I need to submit these additional materials? So a transcript, for instance, it might help the reviewers and the company or unit understand what technical skills you have or what classes you've taken. If there's a skill survey, they might need to understand your proficiency in key areas. Could be software, it could be some other type of experience that's a little bit harder to understand from a resume. Sometimes they might ask for a writing sample. Writing might be a part of the position, so they want to have an idea beyond your resume and your cover letter about your writing skills, and so they may ask you to submit a writing sample. The next thing I want to talk about is, discussing how your skills and experience align with the job requirements. There may be a list of job requirements. I encourage you to think about what are the most important skills when you think about this job that you're looking at, and highlight what you can about those skills and the skills you possess related to that. You can always share additional information during your interview. In a cover letter, you generally have about a page or so you definitely have to think through, what do I want to focus on? Let's talk about an example. Experience working on a team may be something that the position is specifically calling out. You may be able to talk about your involvement in a student group or on a leadership board while you were a student. While you talk about that leadership role and student involvement, you can maybe also highlight a few of the other skills that you needed to work in that or to work with those groups. could be your listening skills, could be collaboration, teamwork, things like that. The next thing I want to talk about is making it easy for the reviewer. So as the applicant for a position, it's your responsibility to help the reviewer understand your skill set and experience. Make it clear for them. Can they follow your resume clearly? You want to avoid asking the reviewer to assume things or to have to piece together aspects of your resume. As much as you can do to be clear, that will help you when the reviewer is reviewing your job application. Lastly, be genuine. Why are you applying for this position? If you're graduating, you might say that you're looking to start your career. If you've had some short-term positions, you might talk about that if you're comfortable sharing that. If you're moving to a new area, or if there's a gap in your resume, maybe you're changing careers. That's information that you might talk about, and that will allow the reviewer to understand why this job is appealing to you. When we talk about positions and short-term positions, as a student, sometimes we might work in a position for many years, but sometimes we may change positions every semester, every academic year, depending on what we're working on, what we're interested in, all of those types of things. I encourage you that if the position was intended to be short-term, for instance, like a summer internship, you say that this was a summer internship. Not listing that may look a little bit like you're jumping from position to position. So, obviously as a student, there is some understanding that happens, but being as clear as you can when those opportunities were specific to a certain time period is helpful. This can also apply for term limited appointments that might be for a year, or sometimes individuals work on a contract basis for a particular project that's for X number of time or when this is complete. It's great if you're able to write that, how that came about, so that the reviewer can fully understand your materials. Okay. So now we are going to talk about application best practices. So you may have heard the terms curriculum vitae versus resume. Curriculum vitae is generally recommended or used for academic or research positions, as it lists publications, notable projects, teaching assignments. For most staff positions, a resume is recommended. Submitting a CV or curriculum vitae for a staff position is okay, but it may cause the reviewer of that application to wonder if you really understand that this is a staff position. So I just encourage you to think about that when you are submitting your materials and what will best display what the opportunity entails. It's recommended that you clearly note the length of time that you've been in each position. It's recommended that you include the year and the month, but at a minimum to list the year. So as an example, if you were working in a position from March of 2023 to February of 2024, that would be the preferred method of listing that on your resume. If you choose the option of listing the year 2023 to 2024, that could be almost 2 full years of working in that position, or it could be 2 months. And so not listing the month would mean that the reviewer needs to interpret that information. Also, having your cover or your resume in chronological order is recommended. I would say that this is the norm for U of M staff positions. There are other options. You can do a functional or skill-based resume. It just may be a little bit more work for the reviewer to fully understand your skills and experience. So if you do choose the functional or skill-based resume, try to think about the reviewer's experience in reading that resume. We talked a little bit already about gaps or unique circumstances that might be visible in your resume. If you're comfortable sharing why that might be, I encourage you to. Another thing that is helpful is asking someone to review your materials before you submit them. It's really easy to miss a typo or to forget something because you've read it 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Also, as somebody that's been reviewing resumes for many, many years, I can tell you that in every search, there are always a few applications where the job listed is not the job that is being applied for. So sometimes by helping having another person review your materials, they could catch something like that. There are a lot of online templates and resources builders out there online that you can use that can help with a resume. I think that these can definitely be helpful to generate ideas, but I also caution that they may not be able to help you capture everything that you want to say or list. So use it as a tool, get examples, get ideas, but then also take another look and say, you know, when I look at this, is it telling the story that I want to tell? AI, artificial intelligence. I think that we're all still adapting to this new world of artificial intelligence, and that there are very helpful tools. There are tools that can help you build a resume completely, can write a cover letter. Same as I mentioned with some of the other tools, really take a look at this, review anything that artificial intelligence does for you. I have seen where sometimes cover letters do not match a person's resume. Is this maybe because AI was writing the cover letter, trying to make it be as close as possible to the job posting? I don't know for sure, but I definitely want you to take a look at anything that you're using a tool for and recognize that it is a tool and it can be very helpful, but it definitely needs you to take a look at it. And then also, as we think about once all the resumes are put into a big grouping, a lot of times they are anonymized. The goal of anonymizing resumes is to remove as much bias as possible from those that are reviewing. So in examples of resumes being anonymized, names and phone numbers, email addresses, website links, those might be removed. I recommend avoiding graphics or pictures on a resume, except if it's for a marketing or sometimes a graphic position. Obviously, that's a little bit different. But if it's not for one of those types of positions, by including the graphics or pictures of yourself, if it's anonymized, those are going to be removed. And that may cause what the materials that you were hoping to present to look a different way. So if a picture's taken out, there may be a big gap, or the formatting might be off a little bit. I don't mean to say that the person reviewing will put that against you or say this resume looks in a bad format. They'll understand that it's being anonymized, but I say that because you may have spent time wanting something to look a specific way, and if some of this information is removed, it may not look like you intended it to look. We also talked a little bit about follow the instructions. What is required? Another example of something to think about is there an instruction to include all your materials in one document? The U-of-M system, the eRecruit system requires that. So in the system, it asks you to combine your resume and your cover letter into one document before uploading it. I often see a cover letter by itself or a resume by itself. Make sure that you understand what the system limitations are. An application that's missing information might be immediately rejected. In the units that I work in, we tend to reach out to those individuals and give them 24 hours to supply whatever was missing. That may not be the case with every search or with every unit. Okay, let's think about next a few other things to think about when you're applying for jobs. Often a salary range may be posted on an opening or a position. I would say if someone is posting that it's usually pretty firm. At most U of M units, when they post a salary range, they cannot go above what's listed. When you think about a salary range, the top of the salary range is for a candidate that is selected that has most, if not all, of the requirements listed in the position. When you think about your skills and experience you bring to this position, do you feel that you meet most or all of those requirements or skills? If not, you may want to think about how an offer that isn't at the top of the range would feel to you. Going back to the quadrant activity, what is the salary that you're hoping for? And will this salary fit in if you don't have all of the experience or skills asked for in this position? Excuse me. Search timeline. So these can vary greatly across companies, units. At a minimum, I would expect that a search will take 4 to 6 weeks. Excuse me. But it often can take much longer. Particularly the higher a position in the organization, it may require additional interviews and or meetings multiple times throughout the process. Finally, do your own research on the company or the unit that you're applying for. Do you know anyone else that works there? Can you talk to them? Did you thoroughly review the website? Are there anything else? Is there anything else that you can review? Is there anything in the press or the news about the unit or company that you're looking into? Those are all things I would suggest that you do on your own. And after you do that, refer back to the quadrant activity. Does this position align with what you identified as your personal goals and what you identified in the quadrant activity? I want to thank you for your time discussing these topics. I'm now going to pass it over to Bridget, and she will talk to you about preparing for an interview.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Courtney and Jamie, for kind of just starting us off with some of those, preliminary steps to the job search process, as well as preparing your resume and other materials. I'm here to talk about a little bit about preparing for the interview and a few steps that come afterwards if you are given an offer. So going into the interview space can feel pretty nerve-wracking. There's a lot at stake. Some people struggle to really work under that pressure when they're in a room and they're being looked at by 10, sometimes more people. Sometimes it's just a one-on-one space. But a couple things to prepare is kind of coming back to the 4 quadrants activity in another way is just what initiatives, causes, or issues are important to you. What kind of work is meaningful to you? So these questions kind of get us started off thinking about your overall job history, which, like both Jamie and Courtney mentioned, this is not only professional. This could be internships, volunteer opportunities, student co-ops, any type of instance where you've been a part of some sort of work environment. So thinking about what kind of work is meaningful to you can kind of jumpstart not only your job search, but also how you want to present yourself in the interview and things that you might want to bring up from the job posting or potential skills that you'll be able to utilize. Also thinking about describing your work ethic and what helps you do your best work. So these are some other important questions. Just to kind of focus on going into the interview space, which is how do you describe your work ethic? So are you someone who is super type A, super organized, on task? You have to have everything perfectly documented. Are you more casual with it? You don't, have that very specific schedule, but you still manage to get by just keeping yourself accountable. And what helps you do your best work? Is this, going back to the 4 quadrants, is this having opportunities to work from home? Is this having that flexibility in your schedule? Is this working for an organization that is aligned with your values and how you want to present yourself to the world, or maybe the mission is on par with what you enjoy. And then last but not least, what is your ideal work-life balance? So again, before you submit these applications and go into the interview space, thinking ahead of what is your ideal work-life balance. We'll go over a section where you're going to be tasked with asking a few questions at the end of your interview. And one of the most important ones is talking about company culture, work-life balance, how they feel as employees at this organization. Because as much as the job interview is a space for yourself to be assessed by the interview and other staff, it really is also a place for you to assess the company culture, the environment that you'll be in, and just like the overall experience that you have going there. Is this a place that I want to be employed at? Is this something I want to move forward with? So we'll go ahead and move on to some common interview questions. So I know one of the most challenging parts of the interview is preparing for those questions, particularly the first one, which is, what strengths do you bring to this position and what are your weaknesses? So this question can sometimes be challenging because you want to appeal to your place of an interview by talking about your weaknesses as a way to transform them into a strength or something that you're still working on. And so this could be, for example, a common one I hear is I'm a perfectionist, so I want my work to be perfect, and it can cause me to be somewhat neurotic and to lose track of things and to feel that my work is never good enough, so I'm continually spending time going back and making those modifications. So you're stating what your weakness is, and then you're stating how are you working on this. So I'm being mindful of when I'm getting into that perfectionist mindset. I'm having other people review my materials, so I'm not the only one staring at my documents for the whole day. I'm having some feedback from my other coworkers, supervisors, whatever works. And then why are you interested in this position? So this is a really good time to prepare yourself with what the company mission and values are. So you can usually find those on their main website. Just going through, even it's always good to look at if there's any sort of like news articles or information about the company that you've seen publicly, just to share that. I saw you guys on this news interview. I was super moved by the work that you do, and it's something that I'm aligned with. And this position was open, and given my past experiences, I think I would be a good fit for that. And this can go into the next question, which is, how does this position fit within the context of your own career goals? So this is the part where you're explaining, where you are. If you're a recent graduate, I'm looking to get into an entry-level position. I'm looking to gain experience. I'm looking to start my skills out. If you're someone who's more senior level, maybe you're really getting into the management space and you want to have more responsibility and you want to work kind of higher up in that hierarchy. Another really common question is, describe a time when you worked on a team that did not go well. What happened and what did you learn for the future? So on the next slide, which we're going to get to in a moment, we're going to talk about the STAR method, which can be really helpful with these more storytelling problems. I know it's challenging to think on the fly about a specific story or situation you've encountered at your past jobs and stuff. And so I invite you to spend some time thinking about some key moments you've had over the years at past employment opportunities that can directly relate to maybe a conflict. Like the next question, tell me about a challenge or a conflict you faced at work and how you dealt with it. So thinking about, when did I face a challenge at one of my jobs and how did I handle it? And then last but not least, if offered this position, what is your timeline for starting? So before you go into that interview space, really be prepared with a specific deadline for how soon you want to start the role. Some jobs will be open for several months accepting applications. Others will only be open for a few days to a week or two. And so knowing that the timeline of starting is sometimes listed, sometimes it's not. So getting clear about when you want to start. If you especially in this case, are a student who's graduating, make sure that you know exactly when all of your schoolwork will be wrapping up and when your day of graduation is. And if you need some time to really prepare yourself, going back to what Courtney said, to prepare yourself for those changes from being involved in a college schedule with maybe more part-time flexibility into this 40-hour consistent work week. So if you need to take a few weeks to get that situated before you start your job, let your employer, your future employer know and keep that in mind. Especially when you're coming out of graduation and just getting a few things in order, whether it's your transcripts and your diploma, stuff like that. And then if we can go to the next slide, we're going to go ahead and talk about a couple of other things around presenting yourself in the interview. So, dress professionally. It's good to know what the expectation is. We recommend if the company that you're applying for has social media, see if you can find any photos of staff in the office. What are they wearing? Is it like a suit and tie? Is it more business casual? You can always assume that you'll be dressed in a professional, clean manner. So that's some good guidelines to go off of. But just to get familiar, if you're applying for a law firm, it might be the expectation that if you're female presenting, you might be wearing a skirt and you might be expected to wear heels. Check that out through the website. And then arrive early and prepared. So going back to what I was saying in the previous slides, that, preparedness is not only just preparing for those interview questions, but also preparing for why you're interested in this job and things that have drawn you to it and how you can best apply your past skills to be utilized in this new role. So this is the time of Zoom. So there's an instance where your interview could be virtual. And so one thing to do is to inquire about the preferred plan of action if your internet connection is poor or disrupted. Also, beforehand, preparing that your laptop or computer or tablet is working, fully charged, the camera's on, you're not having any issues with your microphone, making sure your connection is good before you begin that interview space. And it might be helpful to set a more neutral background like the one I have on right now. This is from somewhere on campus. It's very nice. That way, you're not worried about things popping up in your background. I personally would love to see all your pets, but it's not the most professional thing. So just making sure that your background is prepared and that even if you're doing a virtual interview, you're still dressed professionally. And I know some of us during COVID got pretty bad about, wearing pajama pants and a dress shirt, and just be aware of how you're presenting if you ever have to get up for any reason. Just a little caution there. And so, yeah, so going back to the in-person space, so being aware of your presentation, how is your nonverbal communication coming across? Are you having open and forward-facing body language? Are you smiling? Do you seem genuine? Do you seem engaged? And during the interview space, just kind of showing those nods and indications that you're, active listening to what they're saying and remaining vigilant about eye contact and appropriate amount. And then being professional and courteous to everyone you encounter at the organization. So there's obviously some challenges, let me go back. When you're presenting yourself in the office, people are going to be paying attention. They're going to be looking. And so if you are going into the interview space as a completely different person than you are in the restroom, for example, and another staff member sees that, that could potentially negatively impact your interview space. So just make sure you're being courteous and professional for the entirety of your time there. And then have a list of references and an extra copy of your resume with you. I recommend just bringing a couple copies in your folder in case they don't have them printed out, in case there's other staff members there who want to take a look at your resume during the interview. It just shows that you're prepared and ready to go into that space. So for our next slide, we're going to get into something I talked about earlier, which is the STAR method. So the STAR method is a really awesome acronym that makes it easy to remember when you're in that interview space and you're kind of under pressure and maybe you're struggling to come up with a specific story or something to talk about. And so STAR stands for situation, task notes, action notes, and result notes. So thinking about the question again, the time you had to handle conflict or a challenge at your workplace. So for example, instead of saying, I'm good at problem solving, you could say, in my internship, I identified a bottleneck in our process, proposed a solution, and reduced our turnaround time by 20%. So specific examples like this will stick with interviewers because not only are you stating the situation you were involved in, what tasks you completed, the actions that you took to get there, and then the results that came out of it. It's also great if you're able to share any sort of quantitative results. So in my example, reduced our turnaround time by 20%. So if you have a growth by a number amount, or if you were involved in like a certain amount of presentations that you completed, or maybe you had a growth in client retention, anything like that, that you can show that growth or that quantitative experience, it subtly explains just how much information you were involved in, just how much data you were involved in, and the progress that you've made. And so this down here is a little just like a little infographic about the STAR technique, just kind of showing like the flow of how you complete the STAR. And also importantly at the top, preparing. So listen to the questions and think of an event. So before going into the interview space, diversify your examples. So try not to rely on just one example throughout the interview. It'll show more versatility if you can draw on experiences from school, work, or extracurriculars or volunteer activities, stuff like that. And so again, having notes and note cards are okay in most settings. If you have a Zoom meeting, for example, it's good to keep it on hand off to the side. So if you need to check back in and review what you're talking about, I know it can be a really good grounding moment, especially if you kind of get off task and you're not sure exactly where to go from here. And so the STAR method, like I said, is a really great acronym just to keep in mind as you're going into the interview space. Okay, and so, okay, so a little bit more about, preparing for stuff like salary negotiation, expectation of benefits, and even just expectation of previous staff or current staff experiences. So where can you research this? So the employer website can be a good opportunity to start off just by seeing, again, some of the company culture on there. So how are they presenting themselves? What is the mission? And if they have any sort of like, if they have an about us page, if they have a news article page, anything like that, just to prepare for different things that you can expect. And then, so other job postings, for example, like LinkedIn, um, ZipRecruiter, Indeed, sorry. There's so many of them. I can't remember them all at the top of my head, but also seeing how their job postings are in there. Sometimes those websites also have direct reviews from previous employers. And websites like Glassdoor and PayScale are great opportunities to see what expected salaries are based on the market that you're in, as well as what the past employees have been reporting. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, if you have any sort of government role, they'll usually have the salary range posted, as well as what tier you'll be in based on your experience. So you can check back on what your experience level is and usually have a good idea about what your pay is and what you can expect to negotiate if that's an opportunity. And also just reaching out to your personal network. If you're on LinkedIn, you see someone who's employed at an organization that you're interested in, you can absolutely reach out to them and, get some feedback from them, get some advice, see how they enjoy their role in the company culture. Um, and another thing I will say is if this can be done pre-interview or post-interview, because it is okay to take time to think over an offer. You don't have to say yes immediately as soon as you're offered it, whether that's in the interview space or later on through email or via phone call. You can always take some time to explore the role some more and to consider your other options. Like we said earlier, if you have other interviews lined up or you have other offers, that's when you can really bring in those the bonus section of your 4-quadrant activity, which is which one of these are going to offer the best package for me. And so I kind of went over this a little bit already, but a couple of things to research when you are going through these websites is average salaries for this role and how does your location impact that? So Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York versus a small town in the Midwest, the salary ranges are going to be quite broad. So you want to make sure that you're checking not only based on like the state that you're in, but also the city and what the expectation is. I mean, even just in Michigan, the the pay for a more rural town up north is going to be a lot different than Metro Detroit area. So just being aware of where these salary ranges are coming from. And then so how does the average fluctuate with experience as well as like variations occur given your experience? So checking out, is it something where job listings are saying, the basic requirements are a bachelor's degree and 2 years of experience, and you're coming in with a bachelor's degree, but you don't have those experience. So it might be good to note that could potentially hinder your application, not to say not to apply, but just to know that you might be starting at the entry level position because you don't have those 2 years. For example, if a job says that this experience can be substituted for college experience, or in the inverse, which is that your work experience can substitute for college credit. That's another thing to just be aware of, seeing where you fall on that, the tier list of experience. And then, what do you know about the compensation landscape for the employer? Is this something where you're seeing on Glassdoor that you haven't gotten a raise, or the staff there haven't gotten a raise in 5 or 6 years, or they're not keeping up with inflation, or it's super hard to have that upward mobility in the company, and that's something you're interested in? Definitely something else to consider before accepting an offer. And then again, what is the bare minimum that you could accept? So having your walk away point, as discussed earlier with the 4 quadrants, if they're offering below your salary range, or they're unfortunately supplying you with benefits that just aren't going to work for yourself or for your family, it's okay to walk away, and it's okay to know that those are where your limitations are. And then last but not least, just kind of feeling out what feels comfortable and most likely and what is ideal. So if you're going through these jobs, it might be helpful to kind of have like a Google document or an Excel sheet going where you're organizing them, and maybe you're listing a few pros and cons of each, the salary range, as well as what you can expect from that role, and then being able to assess at the end. This is especially helpful if you have several offers and you're trying to make the decision on which job is going to be the best fit for you. And so getting into considering other benefits and forms of compensation. So obviously salary is usually the big one that most people are going to be looking for, but don't forget to look at stuff like vacation and sick time, sign-on bonuses, annual increases, different healthcare coverages, flexible schedules. If you're someone who's interested in a more hybrid or even fully remote, keep that in mind as well. So maybe the salary range is about 5K short, but they are offering you a fully remote position. So is that something where that fully remote position is going to make up for the lack of compensation that you'd be missing out on? If you're someone who's planning on attending grad school or further education, consider stuff like tuition reimbursement, or if they have an opportunity to fund higher education and to help you get a more advanced degree. Same with professional development. Do they offer payment for continuing education? Are they offering payment for you to attend conferences? Is there any benefits for transportation or housing assistance? Are there any child or elder care assistance? If family planning is something on your mind, think about what their paternity or maternal leave looks like at the company. Relocation expenses. If this is a job that is going to cause you to relocate, how much are they willing to help offset those costs? Office equipment and location. Is the office somewhere that is maybe not in the best part of town, or maybe somewhere that's just way far out of the way for you? Or in some cases, are you expected to be at multiple different locations throughout the week? Is that something that you want to take on? And then company stock options, are they giving you those? Is that something that comes in your benefits package? And is it something to consider? Okay, so now we're getting into salary negotiations as a whole. So this can definitely be a challenging space. It can sometimes feel a little awkward to advocate for yourself and to come into a space expecting more than what is offered. And so I just want to go over a bit about the language for salary negotiations. So checking in, first of all, like the gauging the openness to negotiate. As Jamie said previously, especially for like U of M offers as well as some government offers, if they have the salary listed on the website, odds are negotiation is going to be pretty limited. If it's something where right off the bat in the job listing it says, open to negotiation, salary is negotiable, you're going into a space where you kind of have that option to really bring the negotiation to the table. And so a good way to start this conversation off is to have a lead in with lots of gratitude. So, for example, Thank you for offering this position to me. I'm really excited and would love to be a part of your team. So you're starting off with that gratitude. You're showing the excitement and the enthusiasm. And then you're going to pivot to something like, however, my research shows that the standard pay for someone in this position with my experiences. And then you're going to go in with that counteroffer. So this is when that previous research will really come in handy. Um, and so, you're checking in, you're saying, I've done some research in the market, and this is given my experience and expertise. I was hoping for something closer to, let's go back to Courtney's example. So for 60,000, this is also a really good space to give a range, starting with the lowest salary that you'll accept and going anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15K more than that. So say you know that 60K is your bare minimum. So you can go with the offer it, can we look at a salary in the range of 60,000 to 75,000? And if the budget is right, they might even just offer you the 65,000. So by giving a range, you give yourself even more opportunity to kind of open yourself to more compensation, while simultaneously, if they're only able to offer the bare minimum of 60,000, you're still going to be making the amount of money that is going to work best for yourself and your situation. And so, another thing that's super helpful with salary negotiation as well as interview prep as a whole is completing a mock interview. You're actually able to do them with us at CEW Plus. We also recommend potentially working with a mentor, a friend, a colleague, just to practice your skills and to really have them give you that feedback, both positive and both with some of that positive critical feedback as well for changes that you can make, especially around salary negotiation. It can be an awkward space. And so practicing how you want to present yourself and, following this script of a gratitude lead-in, pivoting to your experience in the expected pay based on your market, and then hitting them with a counter offer. So this is a great space to practice that, as well as some of the past questions for the interview space. And before we move on to the next slide, one more thing to go over is, as you are coming into the salary negotiation space, this is also a good time to not only ask about those other benefits, but just, get familiar with company culture and ask some of those questions that might be important to you, which is, for example, how can you describe an average day of someone in my position? Or what's your favorite thing about working at this company? And where do you see the company going in the next 5 to 10 years? That way, if you're future oriented and you're thinking ahead, you can kind of know if that is going to align with your values or not. And then last but not least, so coming back a bit to considering an offer, and so some things to keep in mind is just looking at your current and future budget and lifestyle. So looking at your debt to saving ratios, retirement obligations, and fun. Are you the type of person who wants to have a travel budget? And is the salary and vacation time going to work for that? Is it something where you're paying off student loan debt for the next couple of years, and so you want to have a little bit more wiggle room to pay off that debt a little more quickly, as well as retirement? Are they offering, a good match for your 401k? What does the retirement package look like for the organization? Coming back to relocation plans, is this something where the job is going to require you to relocate? Is this something you're interested in? Is this something that's feasible? And are they going to be covering any of those costs? And finally, back to family planning, which is, are you planning on extending your family in the next few years? Is this something where maternity or paternity leave is going to be a crucial factor? Is it something where having that hybrid schedule allows you to be at home with your family more frequently, or allows you to, kind of integrate family care, child care into your schedule? So thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen to, just the process of getting through the interview, as well as expectations and ways to prepare yourself. I'm going to hand things back over to Courtney, and she's going to go ahead and summarize some of our findings. And yeah.
All right, wonderful. Thank you both, Bridget and Jamie, for guiding us through such wonderful information as we've been kind of navigating the landscape of just getting ready for this job transition space. So As you see here, we have some of our different summary information and tidbits that we have available. And I'm sorry, can we go to the previous slide, please? So yeah, just as we went through previous, before your interview checklist, just again, research, planning, getting ready, offer evaluation, as we just talked about, like salary negotiation, asking questions, thinking about your priorities, thinking again about those resources that Bridget had gone through in terms of like the places and spaces, both online and also like in your campus community around you that can help you calculate, figure out, and dive deeper into what you'll need to know and feel best prepared to advocate for yourself and the employment opportunities and experiences you deserve. Next slide, please. And then thinking about just some of those different scripts, questions that you might ask, ways that you might position yourself well to advocate for the compensation that you need, and also thinking about different pitfalls to avoid in terms of kind of just, again, showing up spaces that are not appropriate or late or wrong location, thinking about things and kind of pressuring yourself to rush through without giving yourself that pause moment to reflect, and also just undervaluing yourself and not being able to show up and ask for what you need and what you deserve. So my hope is that this has been a really informative opportunity to kind of pause, sink in some information, also think about what you need personally. Next slide, please. All right, so we take a deep breath, a deep collective breath after we finish all that information. And we think about hopefully that after this in this space, you land somewhere that's really good, a wonderful fit for you that helps you advance your career and have those meaningful contributions in the ways that you want to share your skills and talents with the world. And so what's the guidance and wisdom we want to extend from that point forward? I want you to know that, again, this is an ongoing process. Transitions are always occurring. And so we're moving from being a student to an employee, but also you will move from like early career to mid-career to retirement space, moving from someone who maybe is learning to who is mentoring and training and perhaps overseeing and managing. So just to be aware that you should constantly check in with yourself in a cadence and spacing that makes sense for you. How are you doing? How is this feeling? Are your needs being met? Are you feeling a sense of growth or evolution? What might be spaces of kind of like moving forward and doing some work and other spaces of celebration. I also don't want to underscore the importance of bringing people along for the ride in a sense of support, personal development, and learning. That's going to be just thinking about ways that you might partake in committees in your employment space, whether there's within your team or your larger organization, or maybe some committees in the community. Thinking about ways that mentorship might have a role in your experience in terms of other people that you might need to connect with, both inside your organization or external to it, that have a lot of wisdom and expertise to help you kind of navigate some of those more trickier spots, or just to be a person of encouragement. How might professional associations have value in meeting in terms of connecting with other people who are aligned in mission and role and scope, and being able to bounce ideas off of each other and create new opportunities? And also the importance of alumni networks. If you're graduating from a space or have been a student somewhere formally, how might you connect with your other fellow alum to see what folks are up to and how you might be able to support each other and be aware of each other? And I also just want to encourage you to remember that you also are like a whole person. There's a holistic experience happening here. And so while a lot of this has been focused on just like your own professional growth and development, to make sure that you're taking time for yourself, that you're attending to your health, your wellness, all the things that matter for you outside of the workspace. The way that you take care of yourself, I think, often helps us show up in the best way possible when we're in our professional roles, and also to that we deserve to maintain the presence that we have for ourselves. So just please be aware, make sure you have the supports that you need present, and we hope that there's much success in this space. All right. So we have concluded our content, but I wanted to be able to offer to you that there is a space where if you want more support, you can seek that out. If you are in the state of Michigan and you are a part of either a student, staff, faculty, or community member here for U of M, you are welcome to utilize our current educational counseling services for individual support. And so, as I mentioned before, that's the work that Bridget and I do on an ongoing basis, where we might meet with people one to talk about a lot of these topics we discussed today: job search strategies, starting a new job, doing some different mock interviewing, and also reviewing like cover letter, resume materials to see how we can best position you and best prepare you for the next step. So if you are interested, you can scan the QR code that's on your screen, or you can visit us at our website, which is cw.umich.edu, for how to be able to sign up for services and get an appointment on the books. All right. And if you are curious about where we're physically located, we are in downtown Ann Arbor, 330 East Liberty Street. So if you've ever been in this area, you may have seen our awning. So we encourage people to come in. You're welcome to come and see us in person, but we also offer services virtually through Zoom as well. So you're more than welcome to stay connected, visit our website, and we hope that you have found this space really beneficial and helpful today. And so that as we close out, we just want to say thank you for your time and for your energy and presence. And if there's any ways that you have questions or anything else that we can do to support, please reach out to us.
Thank
All
you.
right. Take good care.
Bye.